welcome to Inside the World of TCR, Episode 9, our third programme of 2019. On the menu this time, WTCR on the legendary Nordschleife, some great action from TCR Europe at Spa, but also TCR Asia at Shanghai, TCR Australia at Phillip Island, TCR Germany at the Red Bull Ring, TCR Italy at Imola, and TCR Russia at Smolensk. We'll also have time for a one-to-one with Luca Engstler. Stay with us. The fifth WTCR race weekend saw the series head to the Nürburgring. Norbert Mikelic made a great start from second on the grid in the opening race, beating Esteban Guerrieri to turn 1. Behind the pair there was a thrilling fight for the final spot on the podium. The crucial point was the straight that links the Nordschleife to the Grand Prix circuit. At the end of lap 2, Rob Huff benefited from the scrap between the cars of Frederic Vervisch and Nestor Girolami that clashed while running abreast, and so Huff climbed from 5th to 3rd. The battle continued on the third and final lap. After a couple of contacts between the two at full throttle, finally the Argentine managed to edge ahead and secure that podium spot. So the first win of the season for Norbert Mikelic, who also moved up to second in the standings. Vervisch finished 5th and Erlaché was 6th. For the Hungarian driver, after missing a few opportunities to claim a win in the season's previous races, it was finally time to celebrate. Temperatures were climbing at the start of the second race, with Johan Kristoffersen starting from pole, closing the door on Antti Buri, and then making contact with him at turn 1. All this helped Frederic Vervisch to pass Buri for second. There was drama at the carousel when Huff tried to overtake Tarquini for third. The two cars clashed and Huff's Golf came off second best, retiring with broken suspension. Delayed by the incident, Tarquini was chased by Farfus, who managed to overtake him to finish third, his first podium result in the championship. After the race, the Italian was given a drive-through penalty because of his contact with Huff. For the reigning TCR Scandinavian champion Kristoffersen, this was his maiden victory in the championship, and also the first win of the season for the Volkswagen Golf. In race 3, Benjamin Leuchter, starting from pole, managed to keep Esteban Guerrieri third on the grid at bay and took the lead into turn 2. Even before the field left the Grand Prix circuit to enter the Nordschleife, a series of incidents eliminated half a dozen cars, including those of Thiago Monteiro and, crucially, Norbert Mikelic and Ted Björk, second and third in the standings. Mikelic collided with Frederic Vervisch and Björk with Andy Prio. During the first lap, Leuchter and Guerrieri had a close fight for the lead, and this was how the German managed to defend his position. The battle in front allowed Vervisch to close the gap, and finally the Belgian managed to pass the Argentine for second. During the second lap, Kristoffersen had to take to the grass while chasing Muller and Katzberg, losing control and finishing in the barriers. The crash was a big one, as you can see from this onboard footage. Benjamin Leuchter won the race, becoming the 9th different winner of the season so far. Cue the celebrations for the German driver and his team. With Mikelic and Björk out of the race, Guerrieri has now stretched his lead in the standings to 45 points. The TCR Europe series resumed at Spa-Francorchamps for rounds 5 and 6. For their home race, Belgian team WRT entered a third car for Ash Sutton. Unluckily for the 2017 BTCC champion, this was how his race started. His car was stuck on the grid at the start of the green flag lap and so was towed to the pits from where he would start the race. Championship leader Josh Files, meanwhile, had to start from the back of the grid after crashing heavily during the morning's qualifying session at Raidillon. Gilles Magnus in an Audi made a perfect start from pole. After a string of poor starts, Santiago Urrutia, also in an Audi, had a decent start this time and maintained his second position going into La Source, while Aurélien Comte's Peugeot made a better start than the Volkswagen of Maxime Potti and was third. Heading into Les Combes, Magnus had started to open up a gap, but behind him it was chaos, with Comte and Brichet cutting the chicane, but more seriously, Teddy Claret in a Peugeot and the Volkswagen of Ollie Kangas made contact and crashed into the barriers. The safety car was deployed while the cars were recovered. JSB Competition's Julien Brichet had crashed his Peugeot heavily during free practice on Friday. Despite tremendous efforts from his mechanics, who spent the whole night before the race repairing the car, Brichet stopped after just one lap. Definitely not the way the Frenchman planned to reward his team. When the race restarted, a group of 6 cars led by Matto Homola were battling for positions in the second half of the top 10. This was the moment when Luca Engstler's Hyundai, after starting from 16th on the grid, overtook Tom Coronel's Honda for 8th. Just 2 corners later, Maxime Potti's Volkswagen, after that poor start from 3rd on the grid, managed to overtake Matto Homola's Hyundai for 5th position. Uruguay's Santiago Urrutia was still looking for his first win in TCR Europe. Not an easy task when in front of you there's an experienced local driver like Gilles Magnus driving an identical car. That was when Urrutia overtook the Belgian into La Source, but only for a few seconds. Magnus was quickly leading again at the exit of the corner as the field headed down to Eau Rouge. TCR International race winner David Kajaya from Georgia had a difficult start to the season, with just 11 points scored from 4 races. But in Spa, Kajaya was back to his old self and thrilled the spectators. Here he overtook Matto Homola for 6th after some brilliant door-to-door action. Josh Files only completed 4 laps and so wouldn't be leading the series after this race. Gianni Morbidelli is another of the strong drivers engaged this year in TCR Europe that's struggling to achieve good results. This was when he overtook Tom Coronel for 10th at the chicane with a clean passing manoeuvre. But Coronel never gives up easily. Within a matter of seconds, the Dutchman tried to recover his position by braking very late into La Source. He touched Morbidelli and the Italian ran wide, being overtaken not only by Coronel, but also by Dan Lloyd, who was running right behind. After his dreadful weekend in Germany with just 2 laps completed, Stian Paulsen was back in business. After starting from 17th on the grid, he was steadily making progress. This was when he challenged Matto Homola for 7th. 9 laps into the race, and Maxime Potti overtook Aurélien Comte for 3rd. Without that shocking start, the Belgian could have played a role in the battle for the top 2 places. On the final lap, as you can see from Martin Rieber's onboard camera, there was an incident between Abdullah Ali Al-Khalifi and Lilou Wadou. The French lady's Peugeot rolled into the gravel and stopped upside down. Luckily, the young driver escaped with just a few scratches. For Gilles Magnus, who led the championship after the opening meeting at the Hungaroring, this was his first win of the year. Urrutia was 2nd, also a season best performance. Potti was 3rd, Comte 4th, Jimmy Claret 5th and Kajaya 6th. For Come To You Racing, it was time for celebration. Under the watchful eyes of Andrijana Borkovic, husband Dusan started race 2 from pole. The Serbian driver managed to keep the lead into turn 1, although David Kajaya, 2nd on the grid, stalled his Cupra at the start, so Jimmy Claret was 2nd in front of Homola and Brichet. On the first lap, there was this contact between Danny Nage and Ollie Kangas while battling for 16th. The Hungarian spun and crashed his Hyundai heavily into the barriers. It was impossible to continue, and the car remained in that position for the rest of the race. At the beginning of the second lap into La Source, Tom Coronel and Gianni Morbidelli made contact while battling for P11, and the Dutchman half spun, losing a few positions before continuing. 3 laps into the race, and after a gentle contact, Julien Brichet's Peugeot managed to squeeze past Matto Homola for 3rd. On lap 4, the safety car was deployed after Nathan Biel crashed his Hyundai into the barriers of the straight going down to Eau Rouge. When the race resumed on lap 6, Jimmy Claret tried to overtake Borkovic into La Source, but the Serbian resisted and the Frenchman went wide. The move benefited Julien Brichet, who was running close behind, and he managed to pass Claret on the downhill straight, passing the old pit lane, moving up to 2nd. On that same lap into the braking zone of the chicane, Brichet overtook Dusan Borkovic, who was then hit from behind by Jimmy Claret. The Serbian spun, and his race was effectively over. Later on, Claret would be given a 30-second penalty for that manoeuvre. On lap 7, Aurélien Comte and Ash Sutton, while battling for fourth, were surprised by Andreas Beckmann coming from behind and who overtook both of them, snatching that fourth place. On lap 8, this is how Stian Paulsen's race came to an end. While battling for ninth, he made contact with Tom Coronel and crashed his Cupra into the barriers. On the same lap, 2 corners later, Santiago Urrutia hit Gilles Magnus from behind. The stewards later took a dim view of the move, and the Uruguayan driver would be punished with a 30-second penalty after the race. For the title contender Gilles Magnus, it was his first DNF of the season. On the last lap, Tom Coronel was hit from behind at Raidillon by Luca Filippi. The Dutchman crashed heavily into the barriers, and luckily everyone managed to avoid the stricken Honda. Julien Brichet once again confirmed his role as the king of the reversed grid, grabbing his third successive Race 2 win. Once Jimmy Claret's penalty was applied, Homola would be promoted to second and Andreas Beckmann to third. For Brichet, it was an unforgettable weekend. After destroying his Peugeot in FP2, not only did he manage to win Race 2, but he also took the lead of the championship with a 13-point gap over Magnus and 24 over Comte. The former series leader Files scored only 3 points and dropped to fourth. But with this kind of action and with still 8 races to go, TCR Europe remains absolutely unpredictable. This month we meet the 2018 TCR Asia champion, 19-year-old Luca Engstler, son of Franz, competing this year in both TCR Europe and TCR Asia.
To be honest, at no point my dad was pushing me to become a race driver. It was always my dream, because I think when you're as a child every weekend on a racetrack all over the world, there is no way you say I don't want to become like the world champions there. I'm really happy to join this team. Of course, there are a few things we have to improve together, but it's a different language, something else. Normally I was always working or driving for the team of my dad, so a few things are just going without speaking about because we know each other for a long time. But for now, I'm really happy with this team. His name is Boris. I really enjoy to work with him. I think we're pushing each other. We have phone calls at 11 o'clock in the night. Let's just say there is something blowing up in the mind and you immediately want to tell him. So what I really like on him, that for him is the same. He's working day and night to improve the car, to improve the setup. So I think we're a really good team together. Yeah, amazing. Nice sport. I love it. I think I'm quite good in it, and I always try to improve myself there as well. I'm playing a lot with my friends at home. We have quite a cool club there where we also try to improve the team. We try to get better, and I really just love to be at home and join them in the training. If you see my calendar, there's no time for holiday, but there's nothing better than being at the racetrack. Doesn't matter if it's the smallest racetrack where there's nothing around. I just enjoy a day at the racetrack, and to be honest, for now I don't know what to do on a day off. To be honest, it's my dad, because I followed his career and the way he did, the way he also did next to the track. It was not like that he came on Thursday with his bag, jumped into the car and raced. He also had to do a business at home, so the moment he came home Sunday night, he was working until Wednesday to leave then to the next track. And he bet big names. He had an amazing career, and I think if I can say in the end of my career I'm a bit like him, then I did really well. It will be tough to fight for a title due to that bad weekend we had in Hungary, causing to the crash. But I think we can do something big this year, and I see us in the top 5.
TCR Asia and TCR China ran a joint event at Shanghai at the beginning of June. At the start, the two Dongfeng Mac Pro Racing Honda cars of Z and Lloyd sprinted from the front row of the grid and took command, while Engstler leapt from 5th to 3rd into turn 1. During the first lap, a collision between Alex Liu and Alex Hui forced the latter to retire. Lloyd began to attack Z and eventually got past him on lap 6. Engstler benefited from the situation and also passed Z, moving up to 2nd. A great battle for 3rd then entertained the spectators. This was when Pepe Oriola overtook Martin Z at the end of the back straight. And this was a couple of corners later into turn 1. Oriola went slightly wide and Z managed to find just enough room to squeeze past on the inside. Lloyd then won from Engstler, Z and Oriola. The two podiums were filled by Lloyd, Z and Huang for TCR China, and Engstler, Oriola and Moran for TCR Asia. At the start of race 2, Sunny Wong, 7th on the grid, stalled and rejoined the back of the field. From the 2nd spot, Pepe Oriola started better than pole sitter Alex Liu and took the lead from Daniel Miranda and Luca Engstler, who started from 6th on the grid. During the first lap, Engstler overtook Miranda and began chasing Oriola. On lap 7, Oriola and Engstler arrived side by side into turn 1. The Spaniard tried to defend his position, but Engstler on the inside had a better line and managed to take the lead with a pretty gutsy manoeuvre. For Luca Engstler, this was his 5th victory out of the 6 TCR Asia races held so far. With only 2 events to go, the fight for the TCR Asia title looks to be a family affair between Team Engstler teammates Engstler and Moran, who are now split by 27 points. TCR Asia and TCR China will race together again at Zhejiang in the first weekend of July. Following a successful season opener at Sydney, TCR Australia visited Phillip Island for the 2nd event of its inaugural season. Dylan O'Keefe's Alfa Romeo sprinted from pole into the lead, followed by Tony D'Alberto's Honda, Jason Bright's Volkswagen and Will Brown's Hyundai, who ran wide at turn 2 and dropped back. On lap 4, Garth Tander's Audi tried to overtake Bright's Volkswagen for 3rd. They made contact and Tander went wide, losing several positions. Andre Heimgartner's Subaru and the Alfa Romeo of Jimmy Vernon benefited from the situation and both overtook Bright, moving up to 3rd and 4th. 6 laps into the race, and probably in an attempt to recover the position, Bright hit the back of Heimgartner's car. They clashed and collected Vernon, who spun off. The safety car was deployed to remove the damaged vehicles. On lap 9, 3 cars arrived side by side while battling for 2nd. After slight contact with Tony D'Alberto's Honda, James Moffat's Renault managed to pass, while Garth Tander went wide, losing a couple of places. There then followed a great battle for 2nd between Brown and James Moffat that thrilled the spectators till the end. This was the last lap when Brown managed to pass Moffat. Out in front, Dylan O'Keefe controlled the situation quite easily, claiming Alfa Romeo's first victory in TCR Australia. Tony D'Alberto finished 4th, Hamish Ribatis was 5th, and Alex Rouleau 6th. The top 5 positions were filled by 5 different brands: Alfa, Hyundai, Renault, Honda and Audi. In the 2nd race, O'Keefe made good use of pole and took the lead from Brown, Tony D'Alberto and Hamish Ribatis. On the opening lap, James Moffat's Renault spun and was collected by Andre Heimgartner's Subaru and Garth Tander's Audi, but they all rejoined. A couple of corners later, there was a 2nd collision between Aaron Cameron's Volkswagen and the Audi cars of the 2 Tanders, Garth, husband, and Leanne, wife. Garth was the only one forced to retire. On lap 9, championship contender Tony D'Alberto retired in the pits with a flat front right tyre. Dylan O'Keefe and his Alfa Romeo Giulietta encored their Race 1 victory, beating Will Brown's Hyundai i30N once again. Hamish Ribatis was 3rd, Nathan Morcom 4th, Alex Rouleau 5th and Chris Pither 6th. Race 3 began with a pile-up at turn 2. O'Keefe spun after a contact with Brown and was T-boned by Martin's Honda. Whitley's Golf and D'Alberto's Honda were also involved, while Ribatist's Audi crashed into Chelsea Angelo's Holden. The safety car was deployed while the cars were removed. Once the race restarted, Aaron Cameron managed to overtake Alex Rouleau into the last corner. While in front, the two Hyundai cars of William Brown and Nathan Morecambe pulled away, managing to score a 1-2 for the Korean manufacturer. Cameron was third, Tander fourth, Moffat fifth and Heimgartner sixth. In the championship standings, Brown has stretched his lead to 52 points over O'Keefe, while D'Alberto is now third with a 90-point deficit. It all happened at the start in TCR Germany's round 5 at the Red Bull Ring, when defending champion Harold Procek, third on the grid, took the lead into turn 1 in front of Julian Apothelos. Behind the pair, Antti Buri, starting from 7th, jumped to 4th after a brief excursion onto the grass. At the start of lap 11 there was contact between Mitchell Che and Apothelos, and both Che's Volkswagen and Buri's Audi quickly passed the Cupra for 2nd and 3rd respectively. In front, Procek was never troubled and took his first win of the 2019 season, in front of Che and Buri. Apothelos was 4th, Theo Koikord 5th and Sebastian Steibel 6th. The crucial moment of the second race was when Antti Buri, who'd started from 4th on the grid, took the lead after overtaking Michel Halder into turn 1, with Malaysia's Mitchell Che also passing as Halder was forced to run wide. Following a slight contact, Procek then also passed Halder for P3, with the Profi car team driver dropping from the lead to P4 in the space of less than a minute. Mitchell Che received a drive-through penalty after it was judged that he jumped the start. But for Antti Buri, this was his 3rd win of the season, maintaining his 100% record of winning race 2. Procek was 2nd and René Kircher 3rd. Buri stretched his lead in the standings to 13 points over Procek, while Mike Halder is 3rd, a further 18 points adrift. At the start of TCR Italy round 5 at Imola, Enrico Bettera from the 3rd spot on the grid was faster than both pole sitter Matteo Greco and Igor Stefanovski, who shared the front row. Halfway through the race, rain started to fall and intensified so much that after 9 laps the race was red flagged. Stefanovski, who was leading when the race stopped, was given a 10-second penalty for a grid position infringement and an incident with Bettera, so in the end Salvatore Tavano won in front of Greco and Pellegrini. In the second race, pole sitter Nardili led the field at the start, but during the first lap he was passed by Tavano, and 1 lap later he lost 2nd place to Bettera. Behind the leading duo there were some tough battles. Pellegrini was punted off by Stefanovski and rejoined at the back of the field. Later on, Guidetti pushed Nardili wide at Ravazza Uno and went through. For this manoeuvre, Guidetti was given a drive-through. On lap 11, Wimmer crashed into the barriers after a contact with Reduzzi. The safety car was deployed. And so the race ended with Tavano victorious ahead of Bettera, Greco, Nardili, Pellegrini and Mugelli. By claiming his 2nd victory of the weekend, the reigning champion retook the lead in the standings, 8 points ahead of his teammate Matteo Greco, while the previous leader Pellegrini slipped to 3rd. At the start of TCR Russia's round 5 at Smolensk, Andrei Maslenikov, starting from pole, resisted an attack from Pavel Kolmanovic, who dived to the inside into turn 1. Behind them, Ivan Lukashevic's Hyundai and Mikhail Grachev's Lada made contact, and the latter was forced to retire. Further back, there was a battle for 7th between Bragin and Lukashevich, with slight contacts between the two. On lap 12, Kalmanovic made a mistake and dropped from 2nd to 6th, as he was passed by Duducarlo, Gavrilov, Badoev and Burlitsky. 1 lap later, Lukashevich tried to pass Bragin at the hairpin once again, but the reigning champion didn't yield. The two Hyundais ran abreast, swapping paint for a while, but Bragin retained the position. So it was a 1-2 for the Lukoil racing team, with Maslenikov grabbing a comfortable victory, his 1st of the season, with a large margin over his teammate Duducarlo and Gavrilov, while Budlitsky passed Badoev on the last lap and finished 4th. Kalmanovic finished 6th. At the start of the second race, Bragin, starting from pole, took the lead, followed by his teammate Pavel Kalmanovic, Kirill Ladigin, Anton Badoev, Klim Gavrilov, Ivan Lukashevich and Alexei Duducarlo, who'd made a poor start. It was a turbulent first lap. Klim Gavrilov in an Audi made a mistake and lost a couple of positions, while race 1 winner Andrei Maslenikov was hit by Pavel Yashin and tapped into a spin. He rejoined at the back. The battle for the lead between Lardiguin and Bragin became tougher and tougher, with some typical bumper-to-bumper, door-to-door action. Finally, on lap 9, Lardiguin managed to overtake Bragin. One lap later, Alex Maslenikov and Mikhail Grachov arrived side by side into the chicane. There was contact, and they both ended up in the barriers. As you can see from the replay, Maslenikov's Cupra was the most heavily damaged, and the safety car was deployed to recover the car. When the race resumed with 4 laps left, the light rain that had been falling from the beginning of the race started to intensify. Lardiguin easily controlled the race and grabbed his second victory of the season after winning the opening race at Grozny. Bragin was second, while Kalmanovic managed to pass Lukashevich to score his first podium in the championship. Duducarlo finished 6th behind Gavrilov. The battle for the title remains extremely tight, with Bragin now only 3 points ahead of Duducarlo and 7 in front of Lardiguin. Maslenikov, Gavrilov and even Lukashevich in 6th aren't that far behind. That then was Inside the World of TCR Episode 9. We'll be back in a month's time with more great touring car action from around the world, but for now, it's goodbye.